Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be ranking all of the artifacts in Minecraft dungeons from worst to best. I've already made a few videos ranking other items such as the unique armor and unique ranged and melee weapons, so check those videos out if you haven't yet. And don't forget that this is a general outlook on these artifacts. Each artifact on this list can be amazing in its own build. I'm just ranking these based on how good they are in the overall scheme of things. Also, the values for the artifacts change as the power level of them increases, so I'm just taking the kind of middle number for each of these artifacts. Okay, so going worst to best, at number 22, the fishing rod. So this stuns the closest mob to you for about 2.5 seconds, and it has a 5-second cooldown. This drops from Squid Coast, which is the tutorial dungeon, and the item is just meh. I mean, stunning one mob is alright. It's not great or anything really worth using when you compare this to other artifacts. I think this is mainly meant to be a starter artifact, which we can learn how to use artifacts from, and I think that's why it's not that good. Next up is the Wonderful Wheat. This summons a pet llama that deals decent range damage. It has a 30-second cooldown if the pet dies, but when it's alive, you can resummon it wherever you want. Now, in general, I think that the pet artifacts in this game are not that good. I think they're kind of mediocre. I mean, they'll give you some more damage, but I don't think they have nearly as much utility as some of the other artifacts. The Wonderful Wheat can be found at Obsidian Pinnacle and possibly a secret level, but I am not including secret levels on this list since you can still get every single item in the game without them. The Tasty Bone is next, which is another pet artifact that summons a pet wolf that does decent melee damage, and it has a 30-second cooldown when the pet is dead, but you can resummon it whenever you want, wherever you want, when it is still alive. Next up is the Shock Powder. This stuns all enemies around you in a pretty large area for about 5 seconds, with a cooldown of 15 seconds. This can be very useful in some situations. It's basically a more powerful version of the Light Feather, but it has a much longer cooldown. 3 times as long. So although it is a decent artifact, it is just overpowered by other ones, and I think overall the stun effect on this one is a bit overkill because we don't need that much of a radius. So although it is a decent artifact, I think it's a bit overkill for a stun artifact, and the fact that the increased radius comes at the price of an increased cooldown just isn't really great, and it makes it so that this artifact is overpowered by other stun artifacts. The Lightning Rod is next, which is a soul artifact, so it requires souls for use, and it gives you +1 soul gathering. Wherever you are pointing when you activate this artifact is where lightning will strike down after about 1 second, dealing decent damage. I think that the way this artifact activates is pretty cool. It is the only artifact in the game that activates wherever your pointer is, and this could be pretty useful in cases where you need to kill a specific mob that is protected by others. Then we have another soul artifact, which is the Corrupted Beacon. This requires souls for use, and it gives +1 soul gathering. As you use this ability, your souls will be used, and it will cast a beam of light that damages all enemies in line of it. The damage is pretty decent, and this artifact can be insane if you have the armor that increases artifact power damage. Next up is the Flaming Quiver, which is an artifact that on use, it will load up 7 fire arrows into your bow, which slightly increase the damage of your bow. So with Infinity, every time you use this ability, you'll be getting about 13 fire arrows in the end instead of just 7. The damage boost on this artifact isn't that great, but it combos pretty well with the Infinity enchant, and that's why it's higher up on the list. The Golem Kit is next, which summons an Iron Golem pet that does pretty strong melee damage and is a pretty tanky pet. Again, when the pet's alive, you can still reposition your pet at any time, but if it dies, you will have to wait 30 seconds before summoning it again. This is a pretty good item, and it's better than the other pets. You won't be getting hit much if this pet is summoned, and it can be great for an AFK emerald or gear kind of farm, as any of the pets can be. The Windhorn is next, which makes it so that enemies that are around you will get pushed back. The knockback on this item increases as you get a higher level of it, and it is a pretty decent range. The cooldown on the item is 10 seconds, and this can be useful for running through mobs without attacking them or getting hit, and it could also save you in certain situations where you get stuck in the middle of mobs. The Totem of Regeneration is next up, and on use, the artifact will place down a totem that has a bubble around it, and if you stand in this bubble, you will slowly regenerate health. The bubble lasts for about 7 seconds and has a 20-second cooldown. This is a decent item, but this isn't really a fast heal. It very slowly heals you and not even for that much. So the fact that it's not a fast heal makes it hard to use in a lot of cases since you constantly have to move. And when I was using this item, I found that a lot of the time I couldn't really get much healing out of it unless I purposely stood in the bubble and just waited, which I didn't really enjoy doing. I mean, there's no doubt that this can be good for a group, for example, where everybody needs to heal up, but individually, it's not that great. Here we have the second totem artifact out of the 2 that are in the game, the Totem of Shielding. This places a totem on the ground that blocks projectiles from entering a bubble around it. It lasts for about 7 seconds with a 20-second cooldown, and it only blocks ranged attacks. If you're struggling with ranged mobs killing you a lot of the time, this could be a pretty good help, but the fact that you can still get hit by melee enemies is not that great. Then we have the Love Medallion. So this has an interesting effect. It turns up to 3 enemies into allies for 10 seconds and gives them a damage buff, but after those 10 seconds are over, they disappear. I think this artifact's pretty decent, but I don't think that it's that great or bad. I think it's kind of in the middle. Next is the Gong of Weakening. This weakens the attack damage and defense of enemies in a circle around you. The effect lasts for about 6 seconds and the artifact has a 20-second cooldown. This is a really strong item. The weakening of enemies' armor can be great against bosses and large packs of mobs. I don't see this used a lot for some reason, but I really think that this item is great. I mean, it will boost your DPS and also make it so you take less damage. It's a great 2-in-1. The Iron Hide Amulet is next. This increases your defense by a good amount for about 9 seconds with a 25-second cooldown. This is just a great overall defense boost when you want to get in melee range of mobs, and it works well with enchantments like Last Stand, for example, which make the artifact proc a lot more. Coming in next is the Soul Healer. This is a soul artifact, so it requires souls to be used and it gives you +1 soul gathering. It will heal you for an amount based on how many souls you have, and it can pretty much heal you to full health when it's maxed out. From my experience in using this artifact, it's been able to sustain me very well, and it's definitely my favorite soul artifact out of all of them. I think it's a great item for people who don't have a leeching based build, and it just guarantees that you have healing throughout the whole time that you're playing. Torment Quiver. This is a soul artifact again, so it requires souls to use and it gives you +1 soul gathering. This artifact gives you 3 torment arrows, of which you use each individually, and this will push back enemies and do area of effect damage to them. Just like the Flaming Quiver artifact that I mentioned previously, this artifact can work really well with the Infinity enchant, since there will be a 48% chance that you keep the torment arrow that you used and you'll be able to use it once again. And the Torment Arrow is really a necessity for any ranged weapon build. It is really powerful. Then we have the Fireworks Arrow. This makes your next arrow shoot a firework, which does significant splash damage on hit, and it has a 30-second cooldown. This item, just like the Torment Quiver, is a must for any build based on a ranged weapon. The Harp Crossbow and Lightning Crossbows benefit the most from this artifact because both of the weapons shoot additional arrows, meaning that you'll get multiple fireworks on hit. And again, with the Infinity enchant, you'll also get a chance to get extra firework shots. With me, I found myself getting about 2 extra shots. At number 5, we have the Light Feather. This has a small roll effect, and at the end of that roll, enemies around you will be stunned for about 2.4 seconds. This only has a 3-second cooldown, so it's essentially a permanent stun to close by enemies since the cooldown is very short. This item is amazing. There isn't really much wrong with it. It's really good if you want to make sure that melee enemies will not be able to deal damage to you. Next up are the Boots of Swiftness, which give you a pretty decent boost of speed, and they last for around 2.5 seconds with a 5-second cooldown. This is just an overall great speed item. It's just going to increase the rate at which you complete dungeons, and I think that's a great thing. Next is the Ghost Cloak, which is pretty interesting. So it gives you around a 10% boost of speed, and then it also gives you a ghost form for 2 seconds. This ghost form makes you unhittable and lets you pass through mobs. This is really useful when speedrunning through dungeons, since it can let you pass through pockets of mobs without running into them and getting stuck. This is a must if you want to finish dungeons really quickly. It just is so utilizable, and it can even be used outside of speedruns. It can just help you with your survivability because it makes you unhittable for a couple of seconds. The Harvester is next up, and it is a soul artifact. So again, you need souls to use it, and it gives you +1 soul gathering. It deals damage in an area of effect around you, and this scales up based on how many souls you have. I think this is the best soul artifact in general just because it can be used in melee range, but other soul artifacts can still work better with different builds, so keep that in mind. At number 1, the god tier item. This completely triumphs every other artifact in Minecraft Dungeons, the Death Cap Mushroom. This gives you a movement speed and attack speed buff that lasts for around 10 seconds with a 30-second cooldown. The movement speed is fairly slight, but the attack speed buff is crazy. It boosts your attack speed by a lot. This is extremely useful when you want to do a significant burst of melee damage, but it may also be useful with ranged weapons as well. This is seriously a god tier item. It is in almost every build, and it is very strong. And if you haven't gotten this item yet or haven't tried it out, I really recommend that you do. It can just make your overall damage per second so much higher, and it's just a really OP item right now. Alright, so those were all of the artifacts in Minecraft Dungeons ranked from worst to best. Hopefully you all enjoyed. If you did, maybe leave a like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other videos. I have just gameplay videos of Minecraft Dungeons and again the ranking videos. Other than that, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.